Hello, esteemed gentlemen. Power isn't just about who leads. It's about who notices the cracks in the leader's crown. History shows us that even the greatest kings, generals, and CEOs weren't brought down by armies, but by their blind spots, the tiny flaws only the quiet observers ever caught. And that's where the Sigma male comes in. While the world is hypnotized by the alpha's booming voice and commanding presence, the Sigma sits back like a man at a poker table, watching every tell, every twitch, every unspoken insecurity the alpha tries to hide. It's almost unfair, like watching someone perform on stage while the Sigma reads the script, sees the stage hands, and knows which spotlight is about to burn out. Everyone else applauds. The Sigma smirks because he's already 10 moves ahead. Today we're peeling back the curtain to expose what the Sigma male sees in alpha males that no one else ever catches. And fair warning, it's not always flattering. Some of it is brutally honest, some of it darkly funny, and all of it will make you realize the alpha's throne isn't as unshakable as people think. Number 1. They notice power doesn't equal influence. Alphas often get praise for their ability to take control of a room. They bark orders, command attention, and people follow. On the surface, that looks like real influence. But when you watch closely, the Sigma male notices something others miss. Control and influence are not the same thing. Control is about forcing compliance in the moment. Influence is about reshaping how people think long after you're gone. And here's the catch. Alphas are usually far better at the first than the second. Most of an alpha's power comes from presence. His energy, confidence, or authority pushes people into alignment, but the effect is temporary. Once the alpha leaves, people often revert back to their natural instincts because nothing deep inside them has shifted. The Sigma notices how often people follow alphas out of obligation, intimidation, or social pressure, not out of genuine conviction. That's why the alpha constantly needs to reinforce his position. He has to remind, correct, and dominate again and again, like a man shouting to keep the crowd from wandering. Influence, on the other hand, doesn't need volume. It's quieter, subtler, and far more permanent. A Sigma can plant an idea in someone's mind without saying much, and that idea grows on its own. The alpha pushes, the Sigma nudges. The alpha enforces obedience, the Sigma inspires change. And that's the difference. The alpha might get instant results, but the Sigma sees how shallow those results really are. To the untrained eye, it looks like alphas shape culture, but the Sigma recognizes the truth. Most of what the alpha builds depends on constant maintenance. His power is heavy, noisy, and labor-intensive. It's effective in bursts, but fragile in the long run. The Sigma sees that when the alpha steps away, much of his influence vanishes like smoke. This is why the Sigma often stays detached from the throne. He knows that true influence doesn't require a crown, a title, or a spotlight. It requires planting ideas that last beyond your presence. The alpha commands the moment, the Sigma rewires the future. And once you notice that difference, the alpha's power doesn't look nearly as untouchable as everyone assumes. Number 2, they see how the group forgives blind spots. One of the sharpest things a Sigma male notices about alpha males is how often the crowd lets them get away with sloppy thinking. In group settings, the alpha's charisma works like a shield. He can deliver half-baked arguments, exaggerate his wins, or even contradict himself, and instead of being called out, people nod along. Most see confidence and mistake it for correctness. The Sigma, however, catches every gap, every weak point, every logical hole the alpha glosses over. And what makes it even more fascinating is that the alpha usually knows it too, but trusts his delivery to cover the cracks. The Sigma sees how this dynamic plays out over and over again. The alpha doesn't need to sharpen every idea, because the group sharpens it for him by default, filtering out flaws and amplifying strengths. It's not that the alpha is stupid, far from it. He's just learned that charisma buys him a wide margin for error. Where others would be held accountable for mistakes, the alpha is rewarded for keeping the show going. The Sigma watches this with a kind of detached amusement, because he knows that the crowd is hypnotized more by performance than substance. This is where the gap between control and depth becomes clear. The alpha may hold the room, but he rarely changes the way people think at their core. His dominance depends on continuous reinforcement, not lasting influence. People follow his lead while he's present, but once he steps out, they're back to their own thoughts and instincts. The Sigma sees that the Alpha's power is situational, not permanent. What fascinates the Sigma even more is how forgiving the group becomes under the Alpha's spell. If a quieter man made the same slip-ups, he'd be challenged or dismissed. But when the Alpha does it, the room bends to accommodate him. That's not real strength. That's the group doing the heavy lifting for him. The Sigma knows that when power relies on mass approval rather than clarity of thought, it's far more fragile than it looks. It's a throne built on applause, not foundations, and applause fades the second the spotlight moves away. Number 3. They catch the hunger for constant rivalries. Alphas thrive on conflict, but not in the way most people think. To the outside world, it looks like competitive drive, that classic winner's edge people admire in leaders. The Sigma, however, notices something different. An Alpha without a rival looks restless, almost incomplete. It isn't just about ambition. It's about needing an enemy to validate his position. Without someone to dominate, the Alpha starts to feel his throne wobble, because power in his world only exists in contrast to someone else's weakness. The Sigma sees how this hunger shapes the Alpha's behavior. He picks fights where none are necessary, frames situations as battles, and turns simple disagreements into wars. He thrives when there's opposition because the fight itself gives him identity. When there's no challenger, he creates one in his head because silence feels like irrelevance. Most people around him admire this fire, but the Sigma sees it for what it is: dependence. It's not strength, it's a craving disguised as drive. And here's the brutal truth, that addiction makes the Alpha predictable. His enemies know exactly how to pull him into a game because he can't resist. His entire sense of dominance depends on being tested, so he takes the bait again and again. The Sigma finds this fascinating because he doesn't share the same compulsion. He can walk away without needing to prove anything, which often makes him more dangerous in the long run. He doesn't feed on opposition, he thrives in independence. The Alpha's hunger for rivalry also reveals a hidden weakness. Peace exposes him. When things are calm, he doesn't know what to do with himself. He's built to fight, to defend, to assert. Without an enemy, he feels unanchored, and that's when his insecurities creep in. The Sigma catches this truth, while everyone else praises the Alpha's competitive edge. What they see as passion, the Sigma sees as a subtle form of desperation. The Alpha can rule the battlefield, but the Sigma knows he struggles to rule himself. A man who needs an enemy to feel alive isn't truly free. He's chained to conflict, while the Sigma walks away untethered, building power in silence. Number 4. They see the hidden loneliness at the top. The Alpha's position always looks enviable from the outside. He has authority, respect, and the admiration of the crowd. People compete to be in his circle, to win his approval, to bask in his presence. But the Sigma, who studies people without being dazzled by appearances, sees something everyone else misses. Being at the top is often the loneliest place of all. The Alpha doesn't sit among equals. He sits surrounded by people who either want something from him, fear him, or secretly wish to replace him. The Sigma notices how this creates a glass wall around the Alpha. The room may be full, the energy buzzing, but the Alpha has no one he can truly open up to without it being misread as weakness. Every friendship doubles as an alliance, every laugh carries calculation, and every handshake is weighed like a contract. He's never fully off duty. The higher he climbs, the fewer people there are who treat him like a human being instead of a title. To most, he's not a man, he's the Alpha, and that role becomes a prison, no matter how glamorous it looks. The Sigma finds this both fascinating and tragic. The Alpha believes he has freedom, but in truth, he's locked inside his own throne room. He can't show vulnerability because vulnerability becomes ammunition. He can't relax because relaxation invites challengers. He can't step away from the spotlight because the spotlight is what gives him existence in the eyes of others. Everyone envies the crown, but the Sigma sees how heavy it sits and how it keeps the Alpha from moving naturally. What makes the Sigma different is that he refuses to pay that cost. He doesn't need admirers, nor does he crave a stage. He values connection that isn't tied to hierarchy. So when he speaks to someone, it's without the constant suspicion that shadows the alpha. Where the alpha stands above the crowd yet alone, the sigma moves through life without glass walls, able to build bonds that are rare, quiet, and real. The world sees alpha dominance as the peak of power. The sigma sees it as a gilded cage. The alpha may rule, but he rarely rests. And to the sigma, that's not winning. It's a slow kind of exile. Number 5. They see the fragile dependency on spotlight. Most people are mesmerized by the alpha's ability to dominate a room. His voice carries, his presence fills space, and his energy seems to set the rhythm for everyone else. But what slips past the crowd and never escapes the sigma's eye is this. The alpha's power is only as strong as the audience watching him. Take away the spotlight, and suddenly the dominance doesn't feel so solid. It feels fragile, even hollow. Without people to command, the alpha looks strangely diminished, like a king stripped of his court. The sigma notices this dependency because he doesn't share it. His strength doesn't require applause or an audience. He can sit in silence and still feel whole, while the alpha often looks restless in solitude. When there's no one to lead, no one to impress, no one to perform for, the alpha's identity starts to flicker. He thrives on recognition, and without it, he struggles to define himself. This is why alphas constantly seek new arenas to dominate: clubs, offices, teams, communities, because stillness feels like suffocation. The sigma doesn't envy that. To him, it's a subtle weakness disguised as strength. If your sense of power relies on external validation, then you're never truly in control. You're renting your authority from the approval of others. The sigma finds it telling that alphas often surround themselves with people, not out of warmth or genuine connection, but because they need that mirror reflecting back their importance. Strip away the crowd, and the alpha suddenly faces himself. And that's the one opponent he isn't comfortable confronting. To everyone else, the alpha looks unstoppable because they only ever see him in his element, on the stage, in the spotlight, holding court. The sigma pays attention to the cracks in between, the quiet moments when the mask slips and the hunger for recognition shows. That's where the truth lies. Dominance built on constant performance is dominance that can't survive in silence. And the sigma knows that silence is the ultimate test of power, because if you can't stand alone, then no amount of spotlight can make you truly strong. Number 6. They spot the transaction behind charisma. Charisma is often treated like some kind of mystical gift, something you're either born with or not. People get pulled into the alpha's orbit and assume it's pure magnetism, a natural aura no one else can copy. But the sigma, detached from the spell, sees it for what it really is: strategy. Every grin, every pat on the back, every perfectly timed joke isn't random, it's a transaction. The alpha is constantly trading charm for currency, and the currency is loyalty. The sigma notices how nothing is wasted. If the alpha laughs at someone's joke, it isn't because he found it hilarious. It's because reinforcing that person makes them feel valued, which keeps them in his corner. If he remembers a small detail about someone's life, it's not just kindness. It's a subtle reminder that he's attentive, which raises his social stock. Even the way he compliments is measured. He gives enough praise to build a bond, but not so much that the other person feels on equal footing. To most people, this looks like effortless charisma. To the sigma, it looks like social accounting, with every move logged in an invisible ledger. And here's the part few realize. This kind of charisma requires constant energy. The alpha has to stay on all the time, keeping the machine running, reinforcing relationships, making deposits of charm so he can cash out influence later. The sigma notices the strain in that. While the crowd is swept up in admiration, he sees the pressure, because if the alpha ever stops, even for a moment, some of that loyalty starts to slip. The sigma doesn't play that game because he doesn't need to. His influence comes from being unshakably himself, not from constant transactions. That's why people often find his presence more unsettling, but also more memorable. He isn't investing in others to buy their loyalty. and that lack of effort paradoxically makes him harder to forget. Meanwhile, the alpha is caught in a loop, always performing, always calculating, always ensuring the charm keeps paying dividends. What the sigma sees is the cost behind the charisma. To the world, it looks effortless. To him, it looks like a man chained to an endless performance, feeding everyone else so they'll keep feeding him back. Number 7. They notice how status addiction leaks through. To most people, the alpha's energy looks like raw confidence. He's bold, he's loud, he's decisive. But the sigma, who isn't blinded by the show, notices something deeper pulsing beneath the surface: dependency. The alpha doesn't just enjoy validation, he's addicted to it. Every cheer, every nod of approval, every sign of recognition feeds him like a drug. And when that flow slows down, the sigma sees the cracks appear. It's subtle at first, the restless eyes scanning the room, the forced laugh that stretches too long, the way his words get sharper as silence lingers. It's not confidence, it's withdrawal management. The sigma knows that true confidence doesn't fluctuate with applause. If you're steady, whether people cheer or not. But the alpha's rhythm rises and falls with the crowd. The applause becomes oxygen, and when it dies down, the alpha twitches like a starved lion. He tries harder, pushes louder, overcompensates with bravado, all to refill that validation tank. The sigma sees the desperation where others see intensity. What fascinates the sigma is how invisible this addiction is to the crowd. People mistake the alpha's chase for ambition, when in reality it's neediness in disguise. He can't sit still without recognition because stillness feels like suffocation. He doesn't just want the spotlight, he needs it to feel alive. The sigma doesn't judge it, he just registers it as a truth most will never notice. And that's the dangerous irony. The more validation the alpha gets, the more he requires. Each round of approval raises the dose until silence feels unbearable. This is why alphas often burn out or spiral when the spotlight shifts. They've built their identity on external feeding, so when that food source weakens, the withdrawal hits hard. The sigma recognizes this as the ultimate fragility. To everyone else, the alpha looks unstoppable because they only see him at his peak, center stage, adored, unchallenged. The sigma notices the quiet panic when the room isn't responding. That twitch, that flicker, that subtle hunger, that's the truth behind the alpha's energy. It's not pure confidence, it's dependence dressed up as dominance. Number 8. They see leadership turn into performance. To the crowd, an alpha leading looks effortless, decisive voice, steady posture, a presence that feels unshakable. People interpret this as authenticity, as if the alpha was born to command. But the sigma watches closer and catches the truth. It isn't just leadership, it's performance. Every pause, every tilt of the head, every perfectly timed outburst is a rehearsed act honed through repetition like a stage play. Authority isn't just being projected, it's being performed. The sigma notices the mechanics behind the show. The alpha modulates his tone depending on the audience, sharp here, smooth there. His posture isn't casual, it's calculated to project dominance without looking stiff. Even his pacing, whether walking into a room or pausing mid-speech, follows a script designed to hold attention. To most people, these subtleties pass unnoticed, and that's why they work. But to the sigma, who studies human behavior with cold detachment, it's obvious. The alpha isn't simply leading, he's acting, curating every gesture to keep his authority intact. What fascinates the sigma isn't that the alpha does this, it's that people confuse it with raw authenticity. They don't realize they're responding to cues, not to truth. They're clapping for the performance, mistaking the costume for the man, and here lies the alpha's hidden fragility. If the act ever falters, if the mask slips for even a moment, the illusion shatters. His power depends on the performance being flawless, because once people see through the theater, the authority crumbles fast. The sigma doesn't dismiss the alpha for this. He just refuses to play that game himself. He doesn't need a stage, doesn't polish his delivery, doesn't pace his words for effect. His strength comes from not caring whether people are watching, which makes his presence unsettling in a different way. Where the alpha dazzles the room with performance, the sigma disarms it with rawness. The crowd may never notice the difference, but the sigma always does. He sees that the alpha's leadership is as much costume as it is substance. And while everyone else bows to the actor, the sigma studies the script and walks away unbound by the play. Number 9. They notice the exhaustion behind control. To most people, the alpha looks like he runs on endless fuel. He dominates the room, cracks jokes, keeps everyone engaged, and never seems to miss a beat. The crowd sees stamina. The sigma, however, looks past the shine and spots the toll it takes. He notices the small details. The tightening jaw when no one else is watching. The pause before a smile resets. The breath released a second too late. They're tiny flashes, but they reveal something heavy. Control is draining, and the alpha is carrying it like a weight. The sigma understands that the alpha isn't just leading. He's managing an entire ecosystem. He has to read the room, gauge energy, keep egos in check, hold attention, and maintain dominance without slipping. That's not effortless, it's labor. And like any labor, it grinds you down. The sigma sees how the alpha's authority comes at the cost of rest. He can't fully relax, because relaxing means surrendering control, even if only for a moment. And in the alpha's world, letting go is dangerous. It risks cracks in the image that people might notice. Everyone else sees confidence, but the sigma sees the constant maintenance. The alpha has to refill the energy of the group, smooth conflicts, redirect conversations, and hold the frame together. Each of these requires mental fuel. That's why those small moments of fatigue are so telling. They're glimpses of the price the alpha pays to wear the crown. He looks tireless only because he can't afford to look tired. The sigma finds this revealing because his own power doesn't demand that kind of upkeep. He doesn't have to hold the room together. He lets the room fall where it may. His presence doesn't drain him because he isn't feeding off constant management. That's the key difference. The alpha burns energy to dominate, while the sigma conserves it by refusing to perform. What the world praises as alpha stamina, the sigma sees as exhaustion disguised as charisma. And in those fleeting micro moments, the clenched jaw, the forced breath, he sees the truth. Carrying control is heavy, and no matter how strong the alpha looks, that weight never leaves his shoulders. Number 10. They notice how alphas confuse loudness with power. Most people get swept up by the alpha's volume. His booming voice, his sharp gestures, his dominating presence in conversations, it all feels like strength. The crowd hears confidence. But the sigma notices the subtle disconnect. Loudness isn't the same as power. Speaking the most doesn't mean you're the most respected. Being the center of noise doesn't mean you're the center of influence. The sigma watches how often the alpha mistakes being heard for being believed. He dominates conversations, interrupts, and raises his tone to shut others down. To the crowd, it feels like leadership. To the sigma, it looks like insecurity wrapped in volume. If you truly command respect, you don't need to shout for it. People lean in when silence speaks. They tune out when noise overwhelms. The alpha often doesn't realize that volume is a double-edged sword. Yes, it keeps him visible, but it also exposes how badly he needs the room to recognize him. Silence, on the other hand, unnerves people, because silence forces them to fill the gap with their own thoughts. The sigma knows that silence can hit harder than words. It makes people question, adjust, and rethink. That's a power the alpha rarely taps into because he's too busy filling the air. The sigma finds this especially revealing because he doesn't compete in the same arena. He doesn't try to dominate with noise. He lets others talk themselves into weakness. While the alpha fights to prove strength through volume, the sigma proves it by withholding. He knows that the weight of a pause can dismantle a speech, and that steady eyes can silence a room faster than a raised voice ever could. To the outside world, the alpha looks like he's winning every conversation by being the loudest presence in the room. But the sigma sees through it. True power isn't in volume, it's in control. And sometimes the strongest man in the room is the one who says the least, yet leaves everyone else replaying his silence long after he's gone. Number 11. They see the subtle fear of losing followers. To the untrained eye, the alpha looks untouchable, bold, commanding, completely sure of himself. But the sigma notices the micro-behaviors that tell a different story. He sees the alpha's eyes darting quickly across the room after he makes a joke, checking if everyone laughed. He catches the slight hesitation before the alpha continues speaking, as if gauging whether the crowd is still with him. He observes the way the alpha leans a little too hard into his next statement if someone looks unimpressed. These aren't random tics. They're signs of someone managing fear. Beneath the surface, confidence lies a quiet, constant dread of losing followers. The alpha's entire identity is bound to having people behind him. Followers confirm his dominance. Their approval reinforces his role. Without them, the alpha's power shrinks, because his influence isn't self-contained. It's dependent. The sigma notices this dependency most in group dynamics. The alpha doesn't just lead the group, he monitors it obsessively, scanning for cracks in loyalty, picking up on shifts in energy, and overcompensating when someone resists. The crowd mistakes this for sharp awareness. The sigma reads it as anxiety. This fear of abandonment explains why alphas often work so hard to keep everyone entertained, impressed, or engaged. They can't afford disengagement, because disengagement feels like erosion. One indifferent face in the crowd gnaws at them more than a dozen admiring ones soothe them. The sigma finds this telling, because his own sense of power doesn't rely on retention. If people walk away, nothing in his identity collapses. The alpha, though, must cling to his following, because without it, his role as alpha ceases to exist. That's the hidden fragility the sigma sees. Dominance isn't just about strength, it's about dependence. And when that strength depends on constant confirmation, it's never fully stable. The alpha might look bold on the outside, but the sigma can see the flicker underneath. The tiny calculations, the nervous glances, the subtle checks. It's not arrogance driving him, it's fear. Fear of being abandoned by the very people who make his power possible. Number 12, they catch the scripted spontaneity. When the alpha breaks from his usual controlled delivery and throws in what looks like a raw, spontaneous remark, the crowd eats it up. People think, that's real, that's authentic. But the sigma, sitting back with unshaken eyes, notices the edges. The timing is too perfect, the phrasing too clean, the rhythm too practiced. What looks like spontaneity is often rehearsal disguised as improvisation. The sigma knows the difference, because true unpredictability has rough edges, and the alpha's unplanned lines are polished smooth. The alpha relies on these moments because they humanize him. They make him look less scripted, more relatable, like a man comfortable enough to drop the act. But the sigma sees the trick. He knows those accidental jokes have been tried before in safer settings, that those bursts of anger have been tested in smaller doses, that even the pauses and smirks are copied from past wins. It's not raw, it's recycled. The alpha has simply mastered the art of making rehearsal look effortless. This isn't to say the alpha lacks talent. It takes skill to perform so convincingly that most people can't tell the difference. But to the sigma, that skill isn't authenticity, it's theater, and theater has limits. The moment someone spots the act, the magic weakens. That's why the alpha must keep the performance airtight, because cracks in the illusion expose how much of his authority rests on appearances. The sigma doesn't play this game. He doesn't need scripted spontaneity because he isn't building his identity on constant performance. His unpredictability is real, which makes it harder to counter. People never know if his silence means indifference or a calculated strike. Unlike the alpha, he doesn't need to rehearse unpredictability. It just comes naturally from not needing approval in the first place. Where the crowd applauds the alpha's authentic, off-the-cuff charm, the sigma just smirks. He sees the lines for what they are, polished tools pulled from a practiced arsenal. To everyone else, it feels genuine. To the sigma, it's a well-rehearsed mask pretending to slip. And once you recognize the mask, you can never unsee it. Power, status, charisma, these are the masks most people see when they look at an alpha. They admire the loud confidence, the commanding presence, the polished charm. But the sigma sees past the surface, into the cracks beneath. He notices the hunger for rivals, the rehearsed spontaneity, the dependency on followers, the exhaustion of always performing. Where the world sees unshakable dominance, the sigma sees fragility dressed in steel. This doesn't make the alpha weak, it makes him human. But that's exactly why sigmas stand apart. They're not seduced by the spectacle of leadership or blinded by the roar of the crowd. They study what others miss: the fear beneath the boldness, the loneliness behind the throne, the anxiety hidden under control. And by seeing the alpha in his entirety, not just the glory but the costs, they strip the myth down to reality. That's the Sigma's edge. He doesn't compete on the alpha stage, he reads the stage directions. He doesn't crave the spotlight, he sees how it burns those who depend on it. And in that awareness lies a quiet power sharper than dominance, freer than leadership. If this deep dive opened your eyes to a side of alpha dynamics no one talks about, then stay with me. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this with someone who still believes the alpha's shine is flawless. Because here, we don't just repeat clichés. We reveal truths most people are too distracted to catch. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't just scroll away. Subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss the next deep dive. Smash that like button if this hit you differently. Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear your take, and share this with someone who needs to see past the surface. The more we grow this community, the deeper we go.